regulate the industry to achieve standard of the product that is desired in the market. So it's heavily focused on how do we improve quality of our tea. And I know Onesimus will also add here later, we are not in the proposed policy asking for the creation of an authority, because we knew a long time ago that that would not be tenable. So even for the time this policy has been in existence, we have not been asking for an authority. So prices, yes. Prices are a factor of both supply, demand, and then some other environmental factors. That includes the economy, it includes the climate, it includes politics. That's how the prices of tea are affected. So they have affected us in many ways. I'll just start with how did they affect the tea industry. It's a pity, actually, the statistics that Professor was asking for has been provided before in several write-ups, and I'll kindly ask Onesimus to bring those up, the statistics on the contribution of tea to the economy. You will bring that up. If there are other figures that you will miss out, I will supplement. How have tea prices been affected? Because first, let's understand tea traditionally is taken as a blend. So anybody who is into the tea business, the value chain starts from, let's forget the nursery and every other thing. Let's say the farmer. The farmer's tea is collected. We have transportation in between. So there's that logistics aspect. The farmer can deliver, or the factory or the processor can collect from the farmer at a shed that must be provided for by the processor. And then that tea is then weighed at the factory and processed. I don't want to go into the details of the processing within the factory. Once it is processed in the factory, the final product is what we call a bulk tea, black tea in our case. That bulk tea, traditionally, again, is then exported to what we also call Mombasa market. Now, the Mombasa market is not a unique market. It's not only for East Africa. Tea all over the world is sold at auctions, in auction centers around the world. But Mombasa is actually the biggest black tea auction center in the world. It's even bigger than Guwahati in India, which is the biggest auction center in India, for instance, where a lot of tea is auctioned. So Mombasa, our tea gets to Mombasa, and then there are two routes that tea takes to get out of there. But from the factory, I am going to dispatch this tea through another transporter, who is most likely not going to be the processor. It's going to be a private contractor. You get to transport these teas. Those who have the whatever, African Global Logistics, those days we had Bolore, Transami, these, you know them. Those will transport our tea. And our tea is consigned, after it goes through all the necessary customs checks, the tea is consigned to a warehouse in Mombasa. So warehouse comes into our value chain. And those warehouses in Mombasa are also owned by Kenyan companies, but they are Kenyan companies that actually rent them from us as Uganda, because Uganda Property Holdings has some of the largest warehouses in Mombasa. So they are being rented by some of the warehousing companies in Mombasa. Then from the warehousing companies, our tea is then assigned to, I would say, the market segment, in which case you either send it directly to a buyer who is in Pakistan, or you will send it to a broker who is responsible for selling it to you in the auction. So majority of it, 90%, goes through the auction. So it goes to a broker. So what I do by assigning the tea, I take out a small sample, This is an operation that the warehouse does on our behalf. They take out a small sample of my guarantee and send it to 15 brokers that we have in Mombasa. They send a sample, small quantities to 15 brokers who will test the tea. And then they send also small quantities to all the buyers who buy from Mombasa auction. So all the buyers, and those buyers are there are as many as 133. That is in our case in Mombasa. But who are these buyers? These are mainly agents of the final buyer in Pakistan, in Egypt, in UK, in Sudan, South Sudan. So they assign this. This operation I'm talking about is just happening in Mombasa yet. But if I assign that tea directly to a buyer in Egypt, my warehouse will take a sample from there, or if I had in mind that I need to make an offer to that buyer in Egypt, I will sample my tea from here, put it on DHL and send it to the buyer at their address. And then the buyer will test. Some of them, actually, the address is not even Egypt. It's again in Mombasa. So they will test that tea and say, your offer of $1.20, we take it. We negotiate a little bit. Maybe I say, give me $1.30, and then we take it. So we take that. But the basis of that negotiation is the price that you get for those teas in the auction market. If that sale is happening before a sale at the auction, you will take the previous week's market rate to be able to use as a basis. So the buyer can advise, if the agent is in Mombasa, that agent is going to take that tea from the warehouse directly to their other designated warehouse. But if that buyer is in Egypt, then they can ask for what they call fully on board, which means the warehouse now has the responsibility on my behalf as the processor to put that tea on the ship and ship it to the buyer, wherever the buyer may be, UAE or Egypt. Then once the tea has gone on the ship, then the tea is out of my hands. Now what I require is money. But for every private sale, direct sale, the money is paid before the tea is taken. For the auction sales, the money is paid within 2 weeks, but you don't take the tea. The tea remains in the warehouse. Within 2 weeks after the sale has occurred at the auction. That is a rule of the East African Tea Trade Association. Those 2 weeks is what we call a prompt date. The prompt date of 2 weeks. So if you look at the tea value chain, from the farmer who plucked that tea in Jamunga, today it will take that farmer 6 weeks with the most efficient transportation system to get that money back to the farmer. Okay? 6 weeks. Because there are periods you take for what they call cataloging, to just display your tea in a catalog for the buyers to know this tea is available in the market. And then they come and say, can I have the samples? And test them. So it takes time. So 6 weeks before that money comes back to the processor, then you're able to pay. So the 2 weeks prompt date is allowed. But commonly we see that once they have bought the tea, they want to take out this tea immediately, so they pay you immediately, and then you can have that money. So that's the value chain of tea, and that's how we sell our tea. Madam Chairperson, you had asked that value chain question. So what has been affecting our prices? We've said, I want to leave that quality aspect to Mr. Onesmus, because he knows where our problems with them are. One is quality, of course, our quality of tea, and I will tackle that together with the question on Rwanda and why our tea is used for blending. So I'll come to that. So prices have been affected, one, by quality. That will be elaborated. But elsewhere, what is outside of our control has been the suppressed demand from the consuming countries. And which are these consuming countries? Pakistan, Russia, and the CIS, the Confederation of Independent States. All those countries around Russia, what used to be formerly the former Soviet Union, those are now what we call the Confederation of Independent States. UK, Egypt, United Arab Emirates, then Middle East. Those are our big markets. Pakistan particularly is our biggest market for black tea. It takes between 40 to 50% in some years of the tea that we sell in Mombasa, not from Uganda. In Mombasa, that includes Kenya's tea. Because let's look at the production. Kenya produces 80 to 85% of the tea that is sold in Mombasa auction. Uganda produces between 13 and 15% of the tea that is sold there. Rwanda and Tanzania, Burundi and Congo, plus Ethiopia and Malawi now share the spoils